Selections from the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Prologue. When April showers with sweetness pierce the root of droughts of March, and make the buds upshoot and bathe the veins in sap, wherefrom the flowers are born to blossom in these vernal showers. When soft west winds have breathed upon the trees, and tender sprouts appear on all the leas, and when the youthful sun has run his course, half through the ram, the sign of springtime's force, when little birds, so stirred by nature's might, they seem with open eyes to sleep all night, make melody at dawn, then folk also on pleasant pilgrimage long to go, and palmers want to seek some far-off strands, and distant shrines well known in many lands. Especially from every country's end, of England down to Canterbury they wend. The holy blessed martyr, there they seek that help will give if they are sick or weak. Befell that in that season on a day, in Southwark at the Tabard, as I lay ready upon my pilgrimage to start, to Canterbury with a pious heart, at night there came into a hostelry, full 29 in company, of sundry folk by chance together there in fellowship, and pilgrims too they were, that on to Canterbury meant to ride. The rooms were spacious, and the stables wide, and comfortable indeed we all were made, and shortly, ere the sun his head had laid. To rest I spoke with all the fellowship, and so they let me join them on their trip. And we made compact then to rise betimes, and take our way there, as I've told in rhymes. But now, while still I have the time and space, ere that I farther in this story pace, I think it only reasonable and fair to tell you what each one was like, his air, his rank, his bearing, what he travelled in, and at a night, then I will first begin. The Knight. A knight there was, and that a worthy man, that from the very time he first began to ride abroad, and loved high chivalry, truth, and all honour, freedom and courtesy. And thus he rode out in his liege lord's war, in Christian lands and heathen, none so far. In 15 mortal battles had he been, crusades against the Turk and Saracen, and fought in tournaments and won the prize, and yet, although most worthy, he was wise, and in his bearing meek as is a maid, he never had in all his lifetime said an ill-bred word to serf or man of might. He was very perfect, gentle knight. The Squire. With him there was his son, a youthful squire. To be a knight was now his heart's desire. He tried to train his hair to curliness. Of 20 years of age he was, I guess, and singularly quick and very strong. In France and Flanders he had served full long, and valiant been, considering his years. He hoped his fame would reach his lady's ears. He wore the latest clothes, the gown, indeed, quite short, and all embroidered like a mead, of springtime flowers. The sleeves hung down on his side, extremely long and very, very wide. He played the flute or sang the livelong day. He was as fresh as is the month of May. A well-trained squire, one skilled in horsemanship. He sat a horse with just the expert's grip. Could ride in jousts and make his charger prance, compose love songs and draw and write and dance. This lad had fallen in love by moonlight pale. He slept no more than does the nightingale. Courteous he was, willing and meek, and able to carve before his father at the table. The Yeoman. One servant had the knight, no retinue, for straight from war he went to pay his due. Of thanks for safe return, the serving man had close-cropped hair, and face of swarthy tan, and he was clad in coat and hood of green, a sheaf of peacock arrows bright and keen. Under his belt he carried thriftily, and in his hand a mighty bow had he. A sword and buckler by his side were hung, a hunting horn across his shoulder slung. The baldric was of green, and on his breast St. Christopher in silver kept him blessed. A yeoman was he, and a forester, and knew the ways of woodcraft, I aver. The Nun. There was a nun, a pleasant prioress. This lady's smile was coy, I must confess, and she was known as Madame Eglantine. She liked to chant the services divine, but then, in truth, she sang straight through her nose. And as a court-bred dame, she liked to pose. She spoke fair French, but with an accent queer, for Paris she had never come anear. Her mien was stately, and her courtesy so over-nice it strained gentility. Her table manners were indeed a treat. With dainty grace, she reached to take her meat. Her upper lip she wiped so very clean, that never was the slightest fraction seen. Of grease within the rim upon her cup, she never let a morsel she took up drop down upon her breast. Nor did she wet her fingers in her sauce too deep, and yet, in spite of all her social poise and art, she had very, very tender heart. Upon my word, this prioress would cry, to see a mouse caught in a trap and die. Pet dogs she had, which she herself saw fed upon roast beef and milk and sweetened bread. But if one died, she wept till she was sick, or struck them smartly with a stick. When they got underfoot, as pets will do, well built and tall she was, and handsome too. Her eyes as grey as glass, a noble head. Her mouth was winsome, small, soft, and red. Her cloak was modish, and her wimple note was pleated carefully about her throat. Her rosary was coral, it was strung with green, a golden locket from it hung, engraved in Latin. First the letter A, then followed Amor vincit omnia. She was an amiable and gentle dame. Another nun and 3 priests with her came. The Oxford Scholar. A clerk, that is, an Oxford scholar, who looked hollow to his bones, and threadbare too, rode with us on a nag lean as a rake. The youth was poor and starved for learning's sake. He'd rather spend his gold on books than food, or on gay clothes or fun, as others would. Of ethics and philosophy he read, kept Aristotle right behind his bed. He seldom spoke, but what he said was clear, and full of sense, so that you wished to hear. Of high ideals and virtue was his speech, and gladly would he learn, and gladly teach. The Parson. A kindly parson took the journey too. He was a scholar, learned, wise, and true, and rich in holiness through poor and gold, a gentle priest whenever he was told that poor folks could not meet their tithes that year. He paid them up for himself, for priests, it's clear, could be content with little in God's way. He lived Christ's gospel truly every day, and taught his flock and preached what Christ had said. And even though his parish was widespread, with farms remote and houses far asunder, he never stopped for rain or even for thunder, but visited each home where trouble came. The rich or poor to him were all the same. He always went on foot, with staff in hand, for as their minister he took this stand. No wonder that iron rots if gold should rust. That is, a priest in whom the people trust must not be base or what you could expect of weaker folk. The shepherd must perfect his life in holiness, that all his sheep may follow him, although the way is steep, and win at last to heaven. Indeed, I'm sure you could not find a minister more pure. He was a Christian both in deed and thought. He lived himself the golden rule he taught. The Pardoner. The pardoner who came along with him carried a wallet filled up to the brim, with pardons hot from Rome and relics old. At least he said they were. And these he sold to poor believers back in lonely towns. And priests as stupid as the country clowns, a pillowcase he called Our Lady's Veil. He showed a fragment of the very sail of Peter's boat, a cross weighed down with stones, and in a glass he had pig's knuckle bones. And yet in church he read the lesson well, and sang the offertory like a bell. He knew that when the anthem had been sung, he then must preach and polish up his tongue, to make the silver tinkle in the plate. A noble churchman this, the reprobate. His hair hung down in stringy yellow locks. His priesthood he had trussed up in his box, for he observed the new bareheaded style. He and the summoner did the way beguile. By brisk duets they sang the latest hit. Come hither, love, to me. Our ears were split. The pardoner's voice was shrill as any goat. The other sang the bass deep in his throat. Now that I've told you shortly in a clause, the rank, the dress, the number, and the cause, Why these were all assembled at the inn called Tabard, near the Bell, I must begin, and tell you what we did that self-same night, and later of the pilgrimage I'll write. But first I pray you of your courtesy, if they appear ill-bred, do not blame me, for anyone you know who tells a tale he heard another speak should never fail to use the self-same words and matter too, or else be found a liar and untrue. Plato himself had said, if Greek you read, the words must be the cousin to the deed. So even if the language be not fine, be rude or coarse, the fault is theirs, not mine. And if some questions of their rank arise, through my poor wit, I here apologize.